What's up everybody, Greg here with Lensprotogo and Lens Rentals, and welcome back to the channel. Now if you've been following along for the last couple videos, you might have noticed I've been shooting on a new studio backdrop, which you see right behind me. And in this video, I'm going to give you a quick tour showing you everything from the sets that you see behind me, my camera setup, the lighting, as well as some of the storage and workspace that I have down here to either give you some ideas for your own space or just show you how I do it. So let's get into it, first starting off with the set walls that you see behind me. Now over on the right side here, we have this composite board wall, which is just this like 1/4-inch composite board. They're super cheap. They're like 18 bucks for a 4x8 panel. And we have 3 of them here. This is one of the back walls that I can shoot against, and it just has this nice wood texture, which gives it a really good look, especially when it's blurred out in the background. If you're up close, you can kind of tell that it's not real, but being soft focus in the background, like if I walk towards you right now, it looks pretty good behind me. The other wall that I have is over here, which is the one you've been seeing in most of the videos, and this is sort of the fake brick. Now these panels are a little bit more expensive. They have a little bit more depth to them. They're actually raised off, so you get a little bit of shadow when light casts upon it. You get some underneath, so it has a little more dimension to it than the flat wall that we just looked at. But the really interesting thing about this one is that it's actually on hinges, which you might see up above here. And the reason for that is there's actually a third wall behind this one. Now, I'm not going to do it right now because I have to kind of clear everything out to be able to lift this wall up, but it swings up against the ceiling, and then we can shoot on that back wall behind it, which is just sort of like a dark gray. Now, in each of the corners, there's an eye hook, which goes out to a rope, and then that rope goes to a pulley system, and then off to a winch that you can crank up the door, sort of like an old style drawbridge, and that'll suck it up right up to the ceiling and have that back wall to shoot on. So moving on to some of our camera equipment that we use for this studio setup, we have the Sony a7 III, which is the same camera I'm shooting on now. This one just stays on our studio rig. As for the lens, we're shooting on the Zeiss Batis 40mm f2, shooting wide open at an f2, so we get that really nice soft focus in the background. And for audio, we're running the Rode Wireless Go, which I just did a video on a couple weeks ago. You should definitely check that out. One of my favorite lav systems, especially with the size that it is, absolutely fantastic. It's the same one I'm using right now. I just have one set up to stay on my studio rig. And then going down to the base plate, we're using a Kessler quick release. And the reason for this is that I switch off sometimes and use a teleprompter, and that setup uses this same sort of quick release system. So I can go back and forth quickly between teleprompter and just the camera. So underneath the camera, we have the Sachtler Ace tripod, which we're using for our support. And this is a fantastic tripod, has a really nice smooth fluid head. The only thing I don't like about this tripod is that it's not super tall. Even with the spreaders all the way in and both of the legs extended, you don't get much higher than eye level on me, and I'm about 6'1". Other than that, it's a fantastic option. So moving on to the lighting for this setup, I'm only using one light, which is a Westcott Flex 2x2 bicolor, and right now it's set to daylight, and it's coming through this big soft diffusion, which I'm going to show you in a second, but it's also going over and bouncing off this beadboard. Now here I have a 2-foot by 4-foot like foam core that I picked up from Home Depot, super cheap, using the white side. It also has a shiny side if I needed a little bit more reflection, but for in here, I'm just getting some nice soft fill, wrapping that key light around my face. That's going into a duckbill clamp and then onto a C-stand, so I can sort of adjust the position and get the right bounce from that key light. Now going back over to the key light and what we're using for a diffusion here, this again is another cheap option from Home Depot. This is just a painter's drop cloth. One of the really nice things about having a painter's drop cloth like this, besides it being super cheap, is that it also doesn't need a frame. So right now I have it hooked up with a carabiner just clipped onto one of my drop lights in the basement. And you can take this down and get it out of the way if you need to open up a little bit of area to be able to pass through and walk around in this smaller studio space. So that's basically the whole setup that I use for shooting. Pretty simple, one light, a bounce board, camera with a lavalier, really simple stuff. Now moving into the sort of storage area and the work area where I do some of my camera builds and stuff like that. Starting off over here, we have a little couch that I can sort of hang out at. I don't really do that too much, but I do have my Pelican on here, which is filled with all of my gear. I kind of just have this as a go bag, so I have my important things in there that I use for almost every shoot, so I can quickly throw an extra camera in there, close it up, and then be ready to go and start filming. Moving back from that, we have some shelves set up, and these are pretty cheap. Home Depot, again, I think $20 for each one of these shelves. They're not super sturdy when they're by themselves, but if you zip tie them together like I did, they actually are a pretty solid setup, and they work really well. Now going through some of the gear that we have on these shelves, starting at the top here, we have all of my audio stuff. So I have my lavaliers, I have my podcasting setup, audio recorders, headphones, things like that. Going down a shelf, we got my drone, all the extra batteries, chargers, all of that sort of thing. I have some walkie accessories, some extra earbuds, and some surveillance. These things are super great to have. I am never gonna go on set again without having walkies. They're just so handy and they make communication and everything on set so much better. So if you're not using walkies on your productions, I highly recommend picking some of those up along with some surveillance. Going down under that, we have a couple extra things to sort of help with lighting. We have some gels, we have a color chip chart as well as a slate that we can use for slating our projects. Down on the bottom, there's the teleprompter that I was talking about. And this is a nice little teleprompter. It's a pad prompter, so you put your iPad in there and it has a one-way mirror with a hole in the back so you can shoot through it and then you have your text on screen. It's a really nice, affordable way to do a teleprompter setup. Going over to the next shelf, we have all of our lighting stuff, so a lot of Westcott dimmers, DMX controllers, some light modifiers, grids, softboxes, drum softbox, China balls, all that sort of stuff, as well as a DMX controller for doing some DMX lighting work. Going on to the next shelf, over here we have kind of just some random stuff right now. We have a lot of cables, SDI, HDMI, a couple power cables, power adapters, like this D-tap to 4 D-tap breakout. Great for having a ton of accessories on a bigger camera build. Small little matte box, the Bright Tangerine Misfit Atom, as well as some fun things like this prism, so you can get some really cool reflections and stuff in your glass. Going underneath that, we have the Insta360, all of the accessories for that, so extra batteries, clamps, mounts, poles, stuff like that. This is an absolutely amazing camera. This goes pretty much everywhere with me, even if I'm not going on a project. I just throw it in my bag. It's super small and really great to capture behind the scenes moments, especially if you're just by yourself and you don't have a BTS guy. Underneath that, we have a couple more light modifiers, some big black fabrics so we can just get in some negative fill if we need it, as well as some bounce and other reflectors. On the bottom there, we have a Chavette DJ fog machine. It's not a super great one, really cheap, but it works in a pinch if we need it. Most of the time, I'll try to get one of the bigger diffusers if we need fog on set. Going on to the last shelf that we have set up here, it's most of the stabilizer and grip gear. I have a bin just full of some little grip accessories, got a quick release plate, some flex arms, phone mounts, extra plates, tools, things like that. We also have some stabilizing options. The switch pod, which I just made a video on, super great little vlogging tripod. I highly recommend it if you do any sort of vlogging. You can go check that video out. I'll throw a link to it right up here. We've got a Joby pod, a couple smaller tripods, mostly for photo work. They're not really rated to hold the heavier cameras. Definitely could hold the A7 III, but not really good for video. Down on to the next one, we have the Zhiyun Crane case. We're shooting on that right now, but this is all the accessories, extra stabilizers, the hand grips, shoulder mounts, stuff like that for the Crane 2. Down on the bottom shelf, you might have seen this in a couple of the recent videos, and I think the one that's actually going out next week, we use this to go up in a crane, but this is a great harness for shooting in-car stuff. So it's attaching yourself to the car and being able to shoot out the back without having to worry about sort of falling out of the car as you're driving down the street. Definitely a good investment to have if you want to do any of that more dangerous kind of camera work. All right, and then moving on to the last thing, which I just finished up a couple days ago, and this is my new workstation here. I have a 1/4 inch or 1/2 inch plywood on top, just on some 2x4 frames. Super quick and easy little table build. The one great thing about this is I've added in a 12 outlet power strip, and this allows me to charge all of my batteries. You can see I have all my walkies set up here. I have a USB hub, so I can charge 6 different USB devices off of that, as well as having outlets to power my lights, charge iPads, phones, extra batteries like that. There's also a bunch of space on the top of this table that I can use as a sort of workbench to be able to repair broken things or build cameras. And I'm actually gonna be starting to build some FPV drones, so I'm gonna use this sort of as my workstation for those builds. So that's my quick studio tour, going through everything from the sets, the camera, the lighting, all of the gear, the organization, everything like that. If you have any questions about anything you saw in this video, make sure to let me know in the comments down below, as well as if you've done your own studio tour. I'd love to check out and see what you guys are doing with your setups and your spaces. If you guys enjoyed this video and you want to see more just like it, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe for new videos every single week, and I'll see you in the next one.